closed session, and we'll go ahead and call to order the specially called meeting on our closed session regarding facilities management. This time, I'll ask our city clerk if there is any public comments.
Yes, we have one.
This is my public comment for tonight's meeting on City Hall and the assessment. Council, as you look at all the options and start discussing with what to do, there is an option that some of us have been researching, which is selling City Hall to a developer. In return, we enter into an agreement lease that they will retrofit the building for earthquakes, bring all of it up to code, and make the necessary adjustments so that City Hall can be a functioning building again. And with our current state, I believe a couple of years back that the previous city manager was actually working towards a plan in making sure that we were financially stable enough to do this. So I don't know if that's necessarily the option now. But tearing down, rebuilding is just an additional cost that I don't think that we can afford right now. And if we consolidate our offices into city-owned buildings and end the lease altogether at the Pinnear Tower within the next year, maybe this is a more viable option for us to enter into. So just something I wanted to add. I think this is a necessary conversation. I like that you guys are taking the time outside of a council meeting to have more robust discussion about it. Thank you.
That concludes the comments received for the study session.
Okay, thank you. Ms. City Manager, point of clarification, is this a public meeting or is it actually closed session?
This is a public meeting.
Okay, all right.
Study session.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, very good. At this time, we'll go ahead and ask for City Manager, please, to make the presentation.
owned facilities. And just to be clear, we do not necessarily have 185 separate properties with big buildings on them. These truly facilities in this case truly are structures, so there may be multiple structures on the same property. For example, there's a dozen structures on our city yard facility. The assessment also excluded any undeveloped properties. So we truly were looking at structures through this assessment. The assessment itself looked at seismic and structural elements. It looked at the mechanical elements, plumbing and fire protection. It also addressed ADA compliance needs at the various facilities, and looked at environmental issues at these places as well. Next slide, Mitch.
One moment, Chris. Let's go ahead and recognize Councilman Nickel. Just thank you, Councilman, for joining us. Please proceed, Ms. Jensen.
Great, thank you. So the elements of the reports, and we do have a separate report for each facility. They obviously identify the various deficiencies. They also provided a current replacement value, what it would cost for us to replace the specific structures as they stood. And then they provided direct costs to bring facilities into compliance, as well as provided a ranking from fair all the way to this building's kind of beyond hope and should be divested for each of the facilities that they looked at. And then they also suggested timelines to address various deficiencies at the different facilities, things that we could do now to kind of preserve the condition of the facility and really better improve the longevity of the facilities that we had left. So just a basic overview of what the assessments did for each of the facilities, and I'm actually going to hand it over to Mr. Kishta and let him take it on from here to take you through the actual City Hall assessment.
Good evening, Mayor and Council Member. I just would like to recognize a few people that joined me to help me out with this presentation. Online, I have with me Joe Caseta, which is the president of Canon Design, is the company that did the facilities assessment for us about a year ago. I also have online with us Zach Fakir. He is the project manager from Z&K, combined with Dr. Ahmed Reyes and Dr. Dan Yavdanjari. I hope I did not butcher his name, but these are the expert that was sub-consultant to Canon Design that prepared the seismic reports for all the facilities that we have. Next. So we are concentrating in this, my presentation, on the City Hall building. And just to give an overview of the City Hall building that we have currently, it's about 7-story of 105,000 square foot. That is opened in 1974. I think it's been completely built back in 1973. And then the building contained a basement previously utilized by facility maintenance and service personnel. It's also the plaza level, contains an auditorium and serves as the council chambers. And subsequent floors housed administrative offices for various departments. I believe that at the time when it's open, it's also hosted the water and sewer department. And then the building mechanical services are located on a dedicated level above the administrative floor, which is above the 7th floor. So the deficiencies that we have identified at City Hall, according to the report that was prepared by Canon Design, we have structural seismic issues, we have electrical systems issues, communication system, safety and security, fire protection, architectural, plumbing, mechanical, and civil. So we will concentrate in the next slide in what is exactly we mean by seismic deficiencies. So the building that, seismically is not in accordance with today's code. So what is the team have proposed is what we need to do to retrofit or strengthen the building in order for us to make it seismically retrofit. That is the number that you see there is about 10,222,347. Just I would like to get your attention to the image that we have on that page. One of the portion or one of the most important to retrofit this building is what we call installing of a shear wall. That shear wall, if you notice at the rendering of the city hall, that will cover the whole open area that is huge, that is right now existing under the that open area under the city hall right now. So that all will be walled out. The entrance and some of the windows have to be redone in accordance with what we needed to do. So basically, that is the building that is in order for us to do the seismic retrofit. The building have to be completely stripped out, meaning that is all the windows, all the partitions, everything that we have within City Hall have to be taken out, completely demolished, and all what you see is columns and slabs and beams that need to be retrofitted. So that is in order for us to do the retrofit, the seismic retrofit, that is all have to take, to take place. Next. And then there's other additional deficiencies that is the consultant have came up with that is needed in order for us to move to City Hall, which is, as you can see, there's architectural, there's plumbing, mechanical, which is HVAC system, fire protection, electrical, communications, safety and security, civil, and EDA improvement around the building itself. So a total number for the additional services, additional deficiencies, came at $31,823,000. Let me just put in perspective that is even with the seismic retrofit, that even if the City Council have decided that let's go ahead and do the seismic retrofit, let me just bring you that this will not bring the building to today's code. The building was built back in 1970, and we are now in 2020, 50 years. The building and the seismic code have changed through the years. That is, whatever can we do to the building, it will not meet today's code for seismic in the area that we are right now. Next.
Alex?
Yes.
Can I ask you, it says architectural 13 million. What's architectural?
Architectural, sir, mean that is all the work that to be done with taking off the window, replacing the window, the architect feature of the building.
Isn't that the same thing as what you did before with the seismic retrofit?
No, we in the seismic retrofit we need to remove everything. In the architectural, we need to put everything back.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So, for the existing City Hall, the seismic retrofit rehabilitation to full facility use. After we added all the numbers, we're looking at seismic retrofit of 10 million and change. And then you're looking at the subtotal of additional services deficiencies of 31 million.8. So, and we always add 10% contingency to our project just for any unforeseen circumstances. We come up with $45,279,882 to retrofit, to make it rehabable for us to move in.
Question.
So we looked at for the option summary. So the 45.3 mil estimated project cost, that is for seismic retrofit of the existing building, is 10 million alone. Retrofitting change the appearance. The retrofitting will change the appearance of the building due to the required shear walls, as we explained, and full window replacements. And this will change its historic appearance completely. The retrofit rehab only extend the life of the building for 20 more years. And even with maximum retrofit performed, the facility will not meet current building seismic code ratings. So with that,
Can I ask a question at this point?
sure.
So we have a constituent, Tim Prince, has been pretty vocal about the historical value of the style and the design because of who actually did the design. But am I understanding that this building would not look the same when it was done? So the style would be completely different after $45 million. And then that's still not bringing it up to code. Is that correct, Alex?
That is 100% right, sir. Yes.
Okay, so then my question really, I guess, the main question is, what would it cost to just bring in a bulldozer, knock it down, and then rebuild it?
Okay, if you wait,
That's coming. Okay.
I have options. We'll discuss options. Yes, sir, we'll do. So for the other, for the next,
This sounds like a non-starter. I mean,
understandable.
$4 million. Yeah. Go ahead.
So the next slide, Mitch. So what are other options for occupying the existing site? So we have option 2, which is retrofit and rehab partial of the building for use. At the time when we built City Hall, at the time, we have an access of 1,200 employees, and at this point of time right now, we are having less than that. We are less than half of what we used to have before. We're less than 600. So we figure like a let's retrofit and rehab partial building, which is meaning that is we will do like the basement and 3 floors, or let's go to option 3. Let's demolish and rebuild the new 105 square foot facility, same what we have right now, or let's demolish and build a new 50,000, which will take all employees and will be like it will take the public counter, and it will be a chamber, a council chamber. So with the option 2, let's discuss with option 2. So option 2.
Hold on, Alex.
Yes,
Let me just provide some ground rules. Let's let the presentation continue, and then we'll get through all the questions from the council members. So if you could just please, let's hear the options, and then we'll ask all the questions, if you don't mind. Go ahead, Alex.
Okay, thank you, sir. So option 2 is let's seismic retrofit partial rehabilitation. Like I explained, we will do what we do is we will rehab the basement and 3 floors to accommodate staff, and then the rest of the floors will become bare. But whatever we do, we still have to do the seismic retrofit as explained for $10 million. We still have to do additional deficiencies. We'll do partial electrical, partial plumbing, but the HVAC, the mechanical have to be done completely. The ADA have to be done completely. So with that option, we're looking at about $37 million. So that is, with option 1 does not bring again, I just want to emphasize this, even with the seismic retrofit for a partial, it will not bring this building into compliance with the most current seismic building code at this time. So the next option is let's demolish and rebuild it 105 square foot like we have it right now, like it stands right now, and just demolish it and rebuild it to that. With that being said, this is the amount that we are looking at. We're looking about $57 million. This is the current, that is taking the current replacement value that was established in the FSA, includes demolition, provides more space than currently needed to house staff, provides for energy efficiency and other long-term savings through new building and equipment technologies, provides an updated facility with reduced maintenance needs and a useful life of 40 to 50 years. So then we looked at option number 4. Okay, so what if we demolish the building that stand and rebuild a 50,000 square foot, what they consider state-of-the-art building that will accommodate all staff, including a public counter that will be a one-shop stop for all residents, and then with the council chamber. So with that being said, and after numerous consultation with our architectural on-call and with contractors that build shopping centers in a big box construction, they all agree $350 a square foot is a good price to start with. So with that being said, if we will to build a brand new building that is 50,000 square foot that takes us, that will cost us $27,250,000. That will be more appropriately sized to accommodate staff and provide for energy efficiency and other long-term savings through new buildings, provide updated facility with reduced maintenance need and useful life of 40 to 50 years. And that is a building that is almost maintenance free for about 20 to 25 years. So with that being said, we looked at, this is the option that we have in front of us. Option one is to retrofit, rehab existing building. That's for full use. The whole building we rehab. It come up at $45,279,882. Option two, retrofit and rehab existing building partial use. That is basement and 3 floors. And that come out about 37 million. And let's demo, option three is to demo and build a new building, 105 square foot facility. That's come out about 57 million. And then option number 4, demo and build a new $50,000 square foot facility. That will cost $27,250,000. With that, I will turn to Chris so she can go through the property that we own and the other options that we have. Chris?
Thanks, Alex. Mitch, can we get the next slide? Thank you. So, Mayor and council members, one of the questions that we obviously asked was what does our existing inventory look like of city-owned properties, and then also could we consolidate services into an existing building? So through the course of the last month or so, we've gone through and kind of pulled together our property list to give you an idea of what we have available, and we've categorized those into different types of properties. So we've got administration or office type buildings, obviously our community centers, our recreation centers, a number of parks, event centers, we have a cemetery, the animal control facility, and then police facilities, libraries, and parking areas. So I'm just going to quickly go through these slides, not in detail, but just to give you an idea. Next slide, please, Mitch. So for our administrative offices, the city administration campus that you all are very familiar with includes our City Hall building that we're discussing tonight. It includes the 201 building that I'm sitting in now, our convention center, the Court Street Square and its parking area. So that is what we kind of have always referred to as the city administration campus. Obviously, all of the facilities that can be inhabited are in that group. We've also got the city yard. We've got an administration building out on that is now the Mill Head Start building, and a couple of buildings that we rent to the National Guard. Animal control is obviously one facility. Next slide. So our community centers are listed here, and what we did, just so that when you don't see the names of these parks under the park list, is we put them under one category. So if they had a community center, they're listed here. You're all familiar with each of these. So again, just wanted to give you kind of a list of what we had in terms of facilities out there. Next slide, Mitch. Our cemetery, we've got 3 event centers, our California Theater, the 66ers Stadium, and then obviously the golf course. And then 3 libraries. There's actually a 4th location on the libraries, but it's not a property that we own. It's a space that we lease. So next slide, Mitch. Our parks and open space list is the longest of all of them. We've got a number of parks that are true parks. We've got a number of ball fields. We've also got a number of areas that are kind of more like a green belt or an open space from properties that the city has taken over. The next slide as well has parks and open space on it. And then if you go to the next slide, please, Mitch. Obviously, we've got police facilities, and then we've grouped recreation centers for places that really are truly kind of dedicated to that sports piece for the public. So next slide. And a number of parking lots, which are always fun to own. So there's our list of parking lots. Next. So the other piece of the puzzle that we wanted to kind of wrap into this, and we realize it's a lot of information, Council, but we wanted to give you a quick update in terms of the long-range property management plan. I know that there may have been some questions as to whether or not we had facilities out there that could be used that were maybe still kind of hanging around on that plan. So in terms of the property that was intended to be transferred from the former RDA to the city for government use, all of those properties have been transferred at this point. And many of these properties were actually on the list that we just looked at. So again, you can see the city administration campus was one that actually came from those former RDA. Next slide, Mitch. The property to be transferred for future development, all of those have also been transferred to the city. For example, Carousel Mall, as you know, I know that the Community and Economic Development Department is working, I think, on an RFP at the moment for that. So these are all properties that we own that are currently in some form of work for getting some future development onto them. So, and then lastly, our next slide, Mitch. There were a list of properties that were to be sold, and the only two remaining properties out of that list is a location on Mount Vernon, and then also on Wall Street. Both, as you can see, one is pending sale and the other has a pending offer. The other properties listed on this have been sold within the last 4 years. So the CED department has really checked off the list on the different pieces of the puzzle related to the long-range property management plan. And so coming out of kind of all of this information, if you go to the next slide, Mitch, we really, two things. There really aren't properties out there that we're not either already using to their maximum capacity or that are large enough to really get the effect in that one-stop shop that, that the city council and mayor are looking for. Many of our facilities are old and challenged with seismic and other deficiencies. And so I think coming into this discussion with the council, we really, like I said at the beginning, wanted to kind of talk through specifically the city hall, our historic city hall facility and its location, and really try to get a consensus if that's where the council and the mayor would like the staff to be spending their time in terms of establishing a really great new place for us to call home for a long time. So,
okay. Thank you very much, Chris. We appreciate it. Can we have staff please go back to slide number 16? I think there's, let's entertain more the options before us on the city hall facility. I think the balance of the slides talks about all of our property, which is still key and important. But if we're to kind of slice the apple here, to provide our council members an opportunity to opine and provide some direction and reaction to these options here. There are 4 options, council members, before you. Obviously, there are other alternatives. If there is some better solution than what you see here, please provide some background on it, explain your solution, and we'd be happy to entertain it if there's a consensus from the council. Before we get into that, I think that there are other options other than 4. I want to thank staff for their hard work and their diligence in presenting that to the council today. I think that there are other private-public partnerships, and that opportunity exists with obviously the development of the 45 acres across the street. So working in tandem with development and the overall plan for our downtown, especially with the general plan amendment coming soon, perhaps that might be a consideration for us to also provide some direction to our city staff. So we'll open it up to council members. And at this time, please, yeah, Fred, go ahead, Mr. Tourette.
Thank you. Your point about the Carousel Mall is certainly something should be considered. But my thought immediately is that should all be new and hopefully on the tax base and be received. Of course, we don't receive property taxes, but hopefully that'll change somewhere in the future. But that's going to be, mixed use businesses, housing, and what kind of things that we need to attract to our city and to the downtown. And if we were to go there, then we end up with either with a piece of property that's vacant, or we sell it, and I don't know what the market is for selling that white elephant. It's actually a black elephant. And the 201 building and those kinds of things that are really in dire need of being really torn down and rebuilt. To my way of thinking, a state-of-the-art building that houses just what we need for 40 to 50 years, which would be option 4, seems like an absolute no-brainer. However, in any of these options, have we discussed or are we talking about the funding capability? How do we fund this? Obviously, do we do bonds? How do we fund it? Has that been given some serious thought?
Certainly, Councilmember Shred, I appreciate that. Once you give us some direction, when we come back to you, we would come back to you with options for funding as well. Whether that's bond measure or there's several other options, a lease back, but we just kind of wanted to get some direction on one of the options you wanted us to go, or if you didn't want us to go with any of these options and go in a different direction before we did too much work.
So just to finish my questions, so if we picked the highest cost, the option number 3, the 57 million, and we took up half of it for our use and subleased the rest as maybe a revenue stream, which I'm not sure. That's a possibility. Are you saying that one way or another we'll be able to fund this? In other words, somewhere we'll be able to find the funding? I know you don't have an answer or a specific answer, but if we said let's go for the whole enchilada, the $57 million, and you go start to work on that, then that's part of your due diligence will be to find the funding for that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, Councilman Nickel.
Yeah, a number of questions. First of all, these numbers assume that we would be paying prevailing wage and so forth on these facilities in terms of the construction costs, the labor costs, et cetera.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Okay. Now, hypothetically, if we were to offer the Civic Center site to a developer as part of a deal, and they develop this site as a developer rather than the city redeveloping this site, would they be subject to those same prevailing wage costs?
Can I just jump in here? Do you mean if we occupy the building?
If we were, say, to lease it or to let them develop it and maybe lease the land.
Lease back.
Exactly.
Yeah, certainly this is
There
probably.
are other ways to structure this that would change the dollar amounts of the potential costs of reconstructing, retrofitting, so forth, correct?
Certainly, and I think legal could jump in on that. But if we're going to occupy the building with tax money, with
Yeah,
government,
I just don't see the city as being in a position of being developer when it comes to a site this large and complicated. And what I would like to do is look at options that I think somewhat to the mayor's point, I want to speak for the mayor, but from what I was hearing, there are other ways in which we can develop a site like this outside of the city doing it and being essentially the developer. And I think we need to look at that because these numbers simply are way out of bounds. I'm sorry, but they are way out of bounds. There are currently facilities not quite the size of 50,000 feet, but very similar for a small fraction of this price. I know the Arrowhead Credit Union is currently on the market for $1.8 million, and that's a 20,000 square foot facility. Obviously, that wouldn't be big enough for us, but the fact that we would be paying many multiples of that for a facility twice that size still doesn't add up. I think there are many other options. I think these are 4 options that would assume that the city would assume the role of constructing and developing that site. But I think that is one among many, many, many other options that are probably far more economical and far more reasonable. And therefore, I'm a little concerned that we're kind of constraining ourselves to just one particular universe of options when there are many other universes of options out there that would be far more cost effective potentially. So that's the first thing I want to do, is look at other alternatives to developing that site, and potentially other alternatives in terms of acquiring site. The other thing that's abundantly clear to me from the presentation we just received is we've got a lot of facilities, we've got a lot of properties, we've got a lot of sites that we probably need to really start thinking about consolidating. With each one of those sites come liability costs, insurance costs, maintenance costs, so on and so on and so on. And at some point, you really have to begin making assessment of, is it worth keeping each and every one of these facilities or not? And I think as we're coming out of bankruptcy, as we're restructuring our balance sheet, as we're really looking at long-term, putting the city in a much better position, I think the City Hall certainly is among the larger of those assets that need to be considered in terms of its long-term disposition. But just looking at that list of other properties, we've got a huge portfolio that we really need to start chipping away at. And to call it an elephant is probably appropriate, because it is like eating an elephant. And we're going to have to really bite at a time, look at how we start making highest and best use of what land and what facilities we have, and whether or not we still need all these facilities. Baseball stadium, it looks like that was sold. Is that my understanding?
The city acquired that from the long range
Right.
management plan. We're owners of it now.
So the city owns the baseball stadium.
That's correct. And
right?
we have a lease with the 66ers.
Right. Okay. And I think that's something I wanted to make sure was clear in that plan, because it looked like we sold it off. That's actually on us now. We own that too. So we own quite a bit now. There are other properties I have questions on that I won't go into this evening, but I did also want to make sure, I did receive an email this afternoon. I don't know if it was read into the record as public comment, but there are other financing options out there as well, other than just city general fund. And I want to make sure that we are considering all potential financing options as well. I just want to make sure. I did get a email from a gentleman by the name of Brad Chapman this afternoon. Was that email read into the record? Is that part of our record today?
She sent them out to you, but we don't read them into the records. We don't read the public comments into the records. Genevieve sends them out to you.
Okay, so they're just sent to us, because I would like to read this one into the record, because I think we really need to start thinking very creatively, and not just creatively, but thinking in line with what a lot of other cities across California are doing in terms of finding other ways to finance very difficult projects such as this. And I would just like to read into the record. My name is Brad Chapman, and I am the principal of Alliance Building Solutions, an energy performance contracting business located in Southern California. We have engaged with the cities a handful of times over the past few years to explore the possibility of doing a guaranteed energy performance contract. Unfortunately, due to financial stability, we have always stalled in obtaining attractive funding. Our project consists of replacing dilapidated infrastructure and updated, unfunded equipment needs. This is a capital fee project where the equipment is funded through utility savings, thus no cost or capital is required from the city. Our firm recently successfully obtained $15 million from community banking for such a project as yours. The concern is now with COVID funding mechanisms as they are changing, and we do not know how long we can secure this type of funding. The projects do not require the city to add more staff or manage directly the project. The goal is to utilize as little of your staff's time as possible. As a design build project funded through energy savings, the city can utilize under Proposition 4217 for procurement as to not have to do traditional competitive processes, thus speeding up the process and seeing the savings sooner while installing much needed equipment and upgrades. Our firm is able to start this process with an authorization letter. The possibility of lost tax revenue and COVID-related expenses timing is crucial. But bottom line is there are other mechanisms. I know Fontana, Upland, other cities have looked at such funding alternatives, and I think we do too. I think this is an excellent start. I appreciate what staff has done. I think we definitely have seen or now are aware of what the high end of the costs of a city hall potential retrofit and reconstruction would be. I think now it's our job as policymakers of the city to really begin to provide staff with direction in terms of what alternatives we may want to explore. But I think what I'm coming away with this discussion today is we simply cannot rebuild City Hall. The city cannot rebuild City Hall. That is my conclusion based on the numbers I see and based on the current financial situation of the city. What that means now, in my mind, is that we need to start looking at other alternatives, whether it's leasing other facilities, purchasing other facilities, perhaps putting this property on the market. I am curious, has this property been appraised? Do we know what the current appraised value of the City Hall Civic Center is? I know we recently did a bond swap. We swapped bonds that were previously liabilities on City Hall. I assume those were based on some valuation. What do we know about the current assessed or appraised value of City Hall?
Councilmember Nickel, there was no appraisal been done on City Hall yet.
Now, did we do an appraisal on the city yards?
Nothing. I'm not aware of any appraisal been done in any facilities that we did we did the assessment on.
They were assessed, but they were not.
Yeah, but they were not appraised.
Value, but we would have to do an appraisal to know what
Exactly.
they would sell for.
Okay, because we did do a bond swap, right? Several years ago, we moved bonds from City Hall and moved those to the city yards, correct?
Correct.
And we did it. Did we do evaluation of the city yards at that time?
I don't believe it was a formal appraisal. We can go back and check.
Okay, I'd like to see what that is. And what I'd like to do, and I'll get the city manager's input on this, but and we'll see where the council is tonight. But I think we need to spend some time studying and assessing some of these options. And I don't think I would recommend doing that in the context of the full council at this point. Whether we do it as an ad hoc committee or we do it as a standing committee or some other mechanism, I think we need to spend some more time. I think what staff has given us is an excellent starting point. But I think we need to have some more in-depth discussion to provide some direction to staff and then come back to council with a thoughtful recommendation that really looks at all these other potential options because there are many. And I'll just get the city manager's thoughts. What do you anticipate from us this evening, and what would be the best means in terms of moving forward on this to make sure that we get to a decision if we can't get to a decision tonight?
Well, again, you can kind of see why we brought this to you in a workshop, because we know that there's 8 of you and you all have different feelings about this. So if you were to tell us, we don't want to discuss City Hall anymore, we want you to walk away from that and start looking at other opportunities to lease or build, we could concentrate our efforts on that instead of on the City Hall site.
Mr. City Manager, why don't we do this? Thank you, Councilman Nickel. This is a very monumental, important decision. We thank you, Councilman Nickel, for your thoughts and comments. Let's proceed on to other council members. I don't want one particular council member to dominate the issue here. We're all represented here in our particular walks of life and wards. Any other council members who'd like to make any recommendations or further questions? We have about 15 to 20 more minutes here on this special facilities management, so I just ask that you be conscientious of that time. Any other council members?
Mayor, I was going to try to answer the question that was asked.
Yes, please.
Just
go
real
ahead.
quick. So the question was whether any of these options would require the payment of prevailing wage. And when you look at the labor code, it actually says that any time that the improvements are paid for in whole or in part out of public funds, prevailing wages apply. And then there's a definition, and that includes whether it's direct payment by the city, contribution to reconstruction, whether that might be a transfer of land in exchange for construction, and even the payment of rents or fees or costs contributed to the project. So depending on how this might be structured, the answer is yes. Almost any alternative would require the payment of prevailing wages for this project.
The nice thing about a public-private partnership, to Henry's point, is that we offload the project management and city government kind of stands back and looks and oversees the project via the city manager's lens. But I'm with Henry. This is a big it's an important decision here, and if we were to play it right here, there might be an opportunity for the downtown Renaissance plan that we have planned for Carousel Mall to be bundled in within that. And let's say we were to liquidate this asset here on this campus and then build a new building within the 45 acres across the street. That might be an opportunity that we could all support and to provide some direction. The opportunity is that we really need staff. I mean, it's before you, council members. Now is your time to really provide some direction. We'll open it up to any other council members who have not spoken. Any of you wishing to discuss this?
Yeah.
I'll make some. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Councilman Figueroa. Councilman Figueroa. All right, Councilman Mulvihill.
Yeah, obviously we can't do this by ourselves, and so obviously a partnership is going to be necessary. And now, Sonia, if we partner with a private developer, is that also, and we lease the property from them, is that also going to kick in the prevailing wage?
It really depends on what that lease is. If you're going to ultimately only pay a fair market value in rent, then prevailing wage might not apply because that's a fair market, arm's length deal. So it really depends on whether the government is subsidizing. There have been some very successful public-private partnerships for civic centers. You might take a look at Long Beach as a prime example. It's one that many cities discuss nowadays. And so, maybe that could be further examined and researched to see how that might work.
Yeah, I think if we recommend anything, that kind of a public-private partnership arrangement, as Henry said, any way to cut down costs, and obviously the prevailing wage is a cost that we can avoid. I think is positive. So some sort of a public-private partnership with us leasing in the long run, and maybe a lease back after about 40 years, something like that.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Mulvihill. Councilman Figueroa, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I don't think you saw my hand raised though.
Go ahead, sir.
I generally tend to agree with the public-private partnership opportunity as well. I think that should be an option that we should consider as far as, and I think Mayor, you mentioned it earlier as far as the Carousel Mall location. And of course I'm thinking along those same lines as far as the current location, possibly doing a land swap or including it as part of the RFP process for the development of the new Carousel Mall area. I'm not sure what to call it at this point. It's not going to be called that in the future, of course, but having a new city hall included as part of the development there, and in exchange possibly do a land swap of the current location as well. But definitely a public-private partnership. I'm in support of that. Would like to see what that looks like as an option as well, and encourage other council members to consider that also.
Councilman, can you state your direction in a form of a motion so that we have about 10 to 15 minutes remaining?
Sonia can correct me, but I believe we can be given general direction, but this is a study session. There is no motion on the...
No motion needed, Terry?
I was going to suggest, maybe it sounds like where the conversation is going, that you direct us to look at appraisals of our city hall properties so that we come back with some value with you and start looking into some private partnerships and come back so you can make your decision from there once you know what these properties are valued at.
Can those be concurrent? I don't want to stall here. Can you do
Yeah.
the appraisal and the public-private partnership if there's no objections from city council members? Can you concurrently on 2 tracks?
Yeah. I do want to remind the council that we don't have a real property person,
I
so
understand.
perhaps we might come back to you and recommend that we hire someone to kind of oversee this process.
Okay. Councilman Charette, sir, go ahead.
Thank you. Very quickly. So we get an appraisal on a piece of property. That's great. What's the market like right now? And with COVID, people are going to find that commercial property and office buildings are not going to be what they used to be, I'm afraid. And that's a concern. So are we going to be looking at turning this into housing or condos or what? We need to know also, and Henry used the term, highest and best use, and know where the market is. Let's say we've got, let's say we get an appraisal of $15 million. Is it going to sell for $15 million, or is it going to sit there on the market and just not get us where we need to be? So the value, of course, we need to know the assessment, the appraisal value, but we need to know what the market is. And back to the Carousel Mall, it seems like, from my understanding, we're getting pretty close on a couple of proposals on Carousel Mall, and we've gone it with an RFP and asked them to present based on that information, and to now say, we've changed the goalposts and we want to do a land swap, and we want you not just to do the proposal you're proposing, but we'd like you to build us the city hall and take over the old city hall and that. I don't know. That's probably worth talking about, but it seems like my understanding is I think in talking to Mike Huntley that we may have an item in August on Carousel Mall, and so that horse may have left the barn. So
they will be coming back with their proposals, those 3 proposers. So certainly it's an opportunity for you to talk to them about maybe adding this to their project at that time.
Councilman Nickel.
okay, thanks.
Yeah, I would like to propose that we continue discussing this in the context. I would recommend maybe our Economic Development Ad Hoc Committee. I would like to invite some either members of the development community, members of the finance community that are providing some of these alternative creative options in terms of financing, so that we can become better educated and have sort of a more informal opportunity to really question those that are in the field. Because I think we really, to the point of highest and best use, I think that's going to take some investigation. And I'd like to, in the context of perhaps our ad hoc committee, begin the exploration process of identifying what kind of feedback we get from the development community on this site, whether it is something that has some potential, that may have a better, higher and better use, and then what other funding options might be available to us in terms of accessing capital. And I would just make that recommendation. I know we don't need to make a motion, but I would recommend perhaps in the context of our ad hoc committee, we quickly agendize some discussions and get the ball rolling.
Okay.
So we can keep this moving forward.
Councilman Nickel, you're the chairman of the Finance Ad Hoc Committee, so you have that prerogative to agendize that. Secondly, I think it's incumbent on all of us to be the ambassadors for our downtown. And my point of minor disagreement would be that I think we just continue with public-private partnership, get the appraisal, get some feedback, and let's present it back for city council. Tonight, we're asking the council, what direction do you want to go? There's 4 options. Obviously, we've concluded that the prices are astronomical. I think we're getting some consensus that an appraisal is probably in need, and the public-private partnership. So let's kind of take it baby steps here. I think that's where we're going here, if I'm not mistaken. Councilmember Ibarra, Councilmember.
Thank you. Once again, this is a question for Kristen or Alex. I'm trying to figure out how much was it for demolishing only without building the new ones?
The demolishing of the existing building right now stands about I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. The demolishing of the existing city hall right now stands at $2.5 million.
Okay, that was my one question. And I'm on board also, Mayor, with, thank you, Alex, with the private-public partnerships. You know, we have that opportunity with the animal shelter as well. But definitely I'm on board with that one. However, bringing this to the ad hoc, I think it's best to have workshops as a council as a whole to find out about the funding sources, the other options, instead of just bringing it to the ad hoc. If that's a possibility and my colleagues are okay with it, because only 3 are going to get educated while the other 4 of us are going to be left out.
I think Councilmember, that's fair. I would agree with you on that. That this is a big decision. We all need to be very focused on it. This is more of a council decision, so that would be. I think if there's no objection, let's proceed with the council getting the full recommendation on the appraisal, the public partnership options, and then Councilmember, please continue. I'm sorry.
That's it. That's all for me.
Okay.
But yeah, the prices are too high.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right, we have about 3 to 4 minutes here, folks. Any other council members?
Yes, this is Councilmember Richard. I just want to say that I also agree with what Sandra just said. You know, the prices are too high. I'm really interested in doing a public-private partnership, and everybody needs to be educated on it because it's a big decision for our city. Because we have a lot of our constituents that really care, and they think about what's going on at City Hall. With that City Hall building, I know that it was mentioned about Tim Prince, and he's just one of the many ones that talk about the building. So we just need to take our time, look into it, and everybody needs to be educated on it.
Okay, thank you, council member. All right, any other council members? Councilman Nicol.
Yeah, when do we anticipate we could get something back in terms of appraisal and a subsequent item?
Let's take, we've got a lot going on here. So what we'll do is we'll bring you an item forward in open session on what it would cost to do appraisals and try to find a funding source for that. We'll do that as a side step. And then we'll start looking into these private partnerships to have a workshop, but we do have several other workshops planned. So we'll put that on the list to bring back for those concurrently.
Thank you, council members. We appreciate your time, man. We're right on almost time here. Any final comments? If not, I appreciate our city council. Thank you, staff, and thank you, our consultants, for helping us out tonight. Thank you again. This meeting is adjourned, and we thank you very much. Goodbye.